Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. If you've paid any attention to tech vendors lately, you've definitely heard the bold promises about software robots. They promise instant returns on investment, massive efficiency gains, and just a total revolution in how we work. But what actually happens when that glossy sales pitch collides with the messy, socially driven reality of corporate life? Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating study published in the Journal of Service Theory and Practice. It looks at how corporations are actually adopting these digital workers and, honestly, more importantly, what it means for the human beings sitting right next to them.
Here's our game plan for today. We'll quickly define what these software robots actually are, explore the weird corporate peer pressure driving their adoption, take a look inside some real service centers in Portugal, discuss the reality for the human workforce, and wrap up with a practical implementation roadmap. Let's get into it.
So, first up, we really need to clear up some immediate misconceptions about what a robot looks like in a modern corporate setting. Because when we say robotization, we aren't talking about physical cyborgs walking the halls or giant manufacturing arms. We are specifically talking about robotic process automation, or RPA. Think of RPA as a sort of ghost in the machine. It's software that literally mimics human actions on a computer screen, using a virtual mouse and keyboard to blast through high-volume, repetitive, rule-based tasks. And the primary battleground for this tech? Shared service centers, or SSCs. These are massive, centralized back-office hubs. Actually, over 75% of Fortune 500 companies use these centers to handle their accounting, HR, and IT just to cut costs. So naturally, they're the absolute perfect candidates for automation.
And that brings us to the core of the research we're exploring today. This study goes way beyond the theoretical. It dives deep into how these shared service centers are actively bringing this technology online, and it really highlights the friction between what the software can theoretically do and the very real people management challenges that inevitably follow.
Which leads us to a pretty incredible plot twist about why companies really choose to automate in the first place. You'd think it's purely about the math, right? Just calculating the exact hours saved? Well, not quite. There's this concept in academia called institutional theory, perfectly illustrated by this quote from researchers DiMaggio and Powell. It basically suggests that corporate change isn't always driven by a strict need for efficiency. Often, it's driven by a deep desire to simply resemble peers. When things are uncertain, organizations tend to mimic each other to gain social legitimacy. This whole process of blending in and becoming identical is called isomorphism.
You can honestly think of isomorphism as high school peer pressure just for multi-million-dollar corporations. And there are three specific mechanisms at play here. First is coercive. This is the top-down pressure from parent companies demanding cost cuts. Second is mimetic. This is basically corporate FOMO, straight up copying your competitors because you aren't sure what the future holds, but you definitely don't want to be left behind. And third is normative. This is the pressure from international conferences and major consultants, who are all pushing the exact same software trends. When you combine all three of these pressures, automation suddenly feels way less like a strategic choice and more like an absolute inevitability.
All right, so how does this actually play out in the real world? The researchers took these concepts and applied them on the ground in Portugal, which has actually become a major global hotspot for foreign direct investment in business services.
To really get the full picture, the researchers didn't just send out an online survey. They literally went on the ground, conducting in-depth interviews across 6 major shared service centers. They spoke directly with the managing directors, the HR managers, and the project managers who were actually leading these robot implementations.
Now, what's fascinating here is the makeup of these centers. As you can see, we have a really diverse mix. 3 national groups covering postal, telecom, and retail, and 3 international multinationals in energy, oil and gas, and construction. They employ thousands of workers. Yet, despite being in completely different industries, they all adopted the exact same software, UiPath, and were guided by the exact same major consulting firms. They all completely succumbed to that normative and mimetic isomorphism we just talked about. They initiated robotics simply because it was presented as the ultimate market trend at their conferences.
So, the robots are bought, the consultants are paid. Now we get to the most critical, and definitely the most sensitive, part of our explainer. What actually happens to the human workforce when these software robots are finally turned on?
There's this massive debate in the tech world between task augmentation and worker replacement. The vendor myth constantly claims that robots simply handle the boring stuff, right? Task augmentation, they call it, freeing up human workers to do highly creative, value-added jobs. But the study found a starkly different reality on the ground.
While the robots absolutely do optimize processes and cut down on errors, they are effectively replacing workers. It's just not happening overnight through massive headline-grabbing layoffs. It's happening slowly and quietly.
Instead of firing full-time staff, managers are leaning heavily on very quiet, reactive HR practices. Basically, they're letting attrition do the work. They're encouraging early retirements without hiring replacements. They're seeing increased voluntary turnover. And crucially, the cuts are hitting the most vulnerable first, ending temporary contracts and aggressively reducing external outsourcing. The authors of the study specifically warn that while this avoids immediate social backlash, in the long run, these reactive practices just won't be enough. The slow replacement of workers is going to lead to some major future tensions.
However, the study also revealed an unexpected and honestly super cool outcome. Automation didn't just destroy jobs, it evolved them. To keep these new robotic workforces running smoothly, companies had to create internal centers of excellence. This birthed entirely new roles: robot developers, who program and tweak the software, and robot managers, who monitor daily workflows and handle any glitches. And the best part? These roles weren't always just handed to outsourced IT experts. Existing administrative employees who showed a knack for tech were often upskilled and promoted to actually manage their new digital coworkers.
So, knowing the immense organizational and human challenges involved, how can leaders navigate this whole messy reality? Well, through their fieldwork, the researchers compiled lessons learned into a highly practical, actionable roadmap.
This 6-step process is a vital blueprint. Step 1, you absolutely must predefine your process scope. Map every single step out flawlessly before automating anything. Step 2, predefine your governance model so everyone knows exactly who controls what. Steps 3 and 4 are all about the people. Select a robust internal team and allocate them to specialized tasks. As one manager in the study bluntly put it, you absolutely cannot have a part-time team managing a full-time robotic workforce. Step 5 is pre-dimensioning, opting for smaller, segmented bots rather than massive, fragile monolithic systems. And finally, Step 6, carefully plan the cadence of your implementation so you don't completely overwhelm your entire organization.
As we wrap up this explainer, we've seen exactly how corporate peer pressure drives this automation, how it quietly reshapes the workforce, and how brand new roles are born from the ashes of repetitive tasks. But I want to leave you with this final, provocative question posed by the researchers. We know that not every single low-skilled service worker can be magically upskilled into a robot manager, right? So as this technology becomes standard practice everywhere, what happens to the workers whose skills simply cannot transition? How will businesses and society at large handle the long-term human cost of ultimate corporate efficiency? It's a question every single leader really needs to answer before they plug the robots in.